Hello, welcome back to Talk Seagulls, and we are in very different setup actually. We're in the Earth and Stars in Brighton, and I'm back with Toby Ball, who's been gone for a while. I haven't seen him this year for a start.
Yeah.
And yeah, he is just a great goalkeeper, I have to say. He's really good. But no, it's great to have you back, mate.
No, good to be here. Like I say, been away for a while. So yeah, it's nice. Nice being back in here, different setup. Nice and fresh, new year, new me, all of that lot.
But yeah, it is new year, new us, because, I mean, Brighton have got 3 wins in a row. And I didn't see that coming.
No, you lot are flying, to be fair. You lot are flying. I think it just took maybe that one win, and then that sort of sparked it. I think you lot sort of got a bit of belief back, and yeah, doing really well.
Yeah,
very good.
Very good, and it's particularly that Man United result. Obviously, the Ipswich and the Norwich are nice. We conquered East Anglia, and then we went straight to Manchester and did exactly the same in 9 days. And in them 9 days, Jorginho's got 4 goals, and it looks a bit of a different outlook for him, because I remember Leeds fans saying that he couldn't, I think he was a bad finisher. He was, not very clinical. He'll be a flop or whatever, 40 million flop, anything but. And then just in general, I think there's a bit of a different side to it, particularly that United game. And I thought, of all people that I know to talk about tactics, I thought you would just be the perfect person to ask, because what I saw from Fabian Hürzeler, as I've been very critical of in this season,
have, to be fair, yeah.
and I wanted to see, it's taken a long time. It's 21st of January at the time of recording this, and it's the first time I'm a bit more positive about this. And I do apologise to an extent, but I have high expectations, mate, all right? Yeah. And I saw that game and I thought, we're actually doing the right thing. That second half particularly, okay, we took our foot off the gas after the first, if you want me to be really critical, for them 19 minutes. But after that, we sort of, this long ball, whatever it is he's playing with the overload, was working so well, and United just couldn't live with it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll always stand on it. He always seems to strike me as a manager that isn't scared to change and adapt. I think we see at the moment maybe a little bit of Tottenham. They seem to really have just one style, and when it's not working, it's clearly showing that it's not working. Whereas I think I've always sort of tried to praise him. He always seems like he wants to adapt based on opposition, which I quite like personally. I think every game's different. I mean, sometimes when you your Man Cities, when you got the players that can just do it week in, week out, and they can just play the same style, and it's kind of right, you can't get past them unless they have a few injuries, which it's shown this season. I think when you're not like a Man City, you have to learn to adapt, because other teams, you've got to give them respect. You're in the Premier League, every team's good, so they're always going to try and beat you. The way it is now with the analyst teams they have, they'll be looking and working and thinking, all right, how are we going to stop Brighton? So if you're only playing one way, they'll know how to stop it. So I've always tried to praise him because he has his different ways of playing. And yeah, it worked really well against Man United. And I think you sort of exploited their weaknesses as well. So it shows on both parts. They've looked at Man United and gone, how can we exploit them? So yeah, I think a lot of praise goes towards him, because that would have been the game plan going into the week, really.
Yeah, I agree. I saw a lot of criticism for Amorim, who I actually feel a little bit bad for, to be honest. He's come into a tough job there, really. Let's face it. I mean, it is probably one of the worst ones out there, to be honest. Taking that Man United job on at the moment, from top to bottom, they're just completely rotten. Their squad is not good enough.
It's not the players he wants. I think you can show, and it's he's now having to change his style, and it's difficult. Man United have brought him in expecting to see his style of football, but he probably can't do that because he doesn't maybe trust the players that he has.
No.
It's hard though as Man United, because you see their performance against Liverpool, annoyingly, how they managed to then get a draw there. They turned up and done well. Same against Arsenal, really dug deep. It's difficult because Arsenal, if they would have just put a chance away in that FA Cup game, you'd be like, oh God, Man United were terrible.
Yeah.
But everyone praises them because they dug in. They did work really hard, but that's not Man United. Man United shouldn't be holding on to games and seeing out draws and being really defensive and then trying to nick a goal. The Man United should be dominant. They should be going into games trying to win. So it's a very different Man United to what all the fans and people are expecting. But right in this moment in time, they're going to have to be that really dig deep, grind out results, maybe nick a few draws. Otherwise, they're going to be in a lot of trouble.
It's a relegation-threatened team.
People say that. For me, them and Tottenham, I don't think are going to be anywhere near the relegation.
I don't think they'll go down, no, but
they're still a good, I think, is it 10 points?
10 points, yeah.
They're still a good 10 points away from relegation. I don't see them sides.
No, I don't think they're going to go down, but I think that they're nowhere near the level of being a mid-table side, to be honest. I don't think they're any... Because I actually think the quality of the mid-table is actually pretty good now.
They're where they belong, realistically, based on their performances and obviously the results, that's where they belong, and probably rightfully so. It must be so frustrating because that they see what they do against Arsenal, and there's that real drive and passion, and then they play against Southampton, and realistically they probably could have lost that game, so they've nicked it late on. So it's that consistency, but that's the Premier League. You come up against teams that are so different. You can't just expect to come up against an Arsenal every week where they're going to have most of the ball and you can be really defensive and solid. When you're Man United and you're playing against a Southampton, you need to be dominant on the ball and also solid defensively, which they don't show. It's either one or the other. So I think that's what they're really struggling with. One, the consistency, and two, that they don't really know what to do when they're coming up against slightly lesser opposition. It's almost like they don't want the ball, right? They're fine having the ball. You come at us and then we'll try and beat you on the counter, which for me, that's not Man United. Man United should be going into every game, as we see it as such a big club, going, we want to be winning everything. We want to dominate games of football, but they're just not at that stage.
I agree. I think the one that struck me was obviously going to be Amad Diallo going into that game as everyone's looking at him. And it actually was just like they were just trying to give it to him all the time. Yeah. And you think, if anyone's got half a brain watching that game, you're thinking, why keep insisting on going through the same avenue that's obviously not going to work, because that's the one that's the most obvious to us as well. So we're doing quite a good job of just containing that. And actually that substitution quite late on from Hertzler to bring on Lamptey when, maybe Purvis was getting a little bit more tired in the legs. That's a chance where Diallo maybe could have punished us a little bit. It was pretty ineffective, to be honest, throughout the entire game. And we started it pretty well. As I said, I don't want to just make this a complete review because there's been 3 games to cover since then. But the reason why I pick out this game so much is purely because of the tactics that we physically witnessed. I think the Ipswich game, you didn't see quite so much. I thought this up to about 70 minutes, it was pretty evenly balanced. I thought we actually didn't look in the game at all, really, in that first half. Whereas in that last 20 minutes, we looked, very good. I think once we scored, I think when you bring on the likes of Jorginho, Mitoma, Minte, these players, if against any team, they're a lot to handle. We did the same against United, I think, against Norwich, putting out the first 11 against the mid-table championship team. You'd like to hope we go and beat them 4-0, to be fair.
I think that was important, though. I think that was a really good decision from Hertzler to go and do that and actually put a statement in place, because that's a risk. Because if you lot would have lost that game, not saying you ever would have done, but if you lot would have lost that game, you were on a bit of a dip. So I think it was really important that you actually went there and put on a statement. I think that's a reason why you've probably done so well these last few games, because it's just given a bit of belief back in the players. Yes, it's lesser opposition, but at the same time, you've gone and smashed them for 4. So it's like, hold on a minute, we're good and we can do this every week. So I think that was actually a really good decision from him to go and do that, because he could have put a lesser opposition side, made the game a bit more tricky, but I think he's done that for a reason, and I think hats off to him because it's worked very well.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm actually really sorry to be doing this, but I've had to interrupt the video, so hopefully you've been enjoying it so far. But I've just got home from the recording and realised I've totally forgot to introduce Saeed. So enjoy this. Make sure you give Saeed all the love he deserves. He's a top guy, top streamer as well. Done a lot of stuff with him in the past, and for sure we'll be doing a lot more. So enjoy this next clip from Saeed, and a very humbled Manchester United fan. Who would have thought he'd been saying it? Enjoy this, and I'll be back afterwards.
Hi, this is Saeed from Saeed TV, and big up to you, Ryan. But yeah, you've done it again, mate. You've done it again. 3-1. That's twice now you've beaten us this season, and you own us. You practically own us. You practically own the stadium. You just, it is what it is, isn't it? Like, did it have to play well this season? Did it have to play well at the Brighton Stadium? And you've got our number. We don't like playing you lot. We hope we don't play you lot again. Hope we get relegated, but bloody hell, we're close to the relegation zone. But all in all, I can't lie to you, I thought there was a particular players that stood out for me. Yari, is it Ayari, is it? He was excellent for me in that middle of the park. I also thought Beleba was a monster, man, in terms of controlling the game, but also being a physical presence in there. I thought he was excellent as well. And I just thought, generally, Brighton were just coordinated better. They were functioning better. They were playing 1-2s, combinations, comfortable on the ball. Never looked like maybe the first half when we got the penalty. After that, maybe it looked a little bit comfortable for you lot. But apart from that, Brighton were playing in second gear, really, to be honest with you. And I thought, your Danny Welbeck was getting the pockets, so was João Pedro. So you were almost getting two midfielders in there, and you're just outnumbering us. And I thought that was great from Hertzler. I thought Minty had a good game. Normally, I'm quite a bit unsure about Minty, but I thought he did well. Mitoma's my baller, man. I always said it, man. Mitoma's my guy. He was excellent as well. But just defensively, Van Heck didn't really get caught too much from our strikers or our attackers, if I'm being honest with you. And yeah, man, it was a very, very comfortable night, or comfortable day, should I say, for Brighton, and thoroughly deserves it. Thoroughly deserve it. I don't know if you're going to get into Europe, but that should be a target for you lot again. And yeah, we were very, very bad. We only had one shot on target. That was out of penalty. You guys didn't really have that many shots on target, but you were very clinical. You got gifted a goal from Anand in the end. But all in all, it was a very, very, very dominant performance from Brighton. And top manager, good players, a good squad. Probably a lot better than what we've got right now in a minute, if I'm being truly honest with you. Our squad isn't up to scratch at all. And we have a lot of problems in our team at the minute. But your team, the bench, Roto coming off the bench, Adingra, all these players, Sonny Marsh, these guys will be starting for United in a minute. So the fact that you got that depth is a testament to your scouting team and whatnot. So fair play on that one. But you guys have Man United's number. It is actually quite sad. It's actually quite, it's tough for me to take because, I think last time we beat you at home, especially, I think it's 2021 when Ronaldo scored. And that is, 4 years ago? It's crazy. So the next time we play you lot could be 2026. So that is, it's a long time. It's a long, long time indeed. But no, honestly, enjoy the win. And you guys are a good team, man. I think my second favourite team is Bournemouth. And I know you guys don't like Bournemouth, but that's my second favourite team, so hold that. You know what I mean? So let's see if you lot can finish higher than Bournemouth, eh? But all in all, very, very solid performance. Your keeper didn't really have to do anything, to be honest with you. And it was a very, very, very good team performance from us. Got a lot to work with. And we're in the mud. We're in the mud. Take care, guys, and enjoy the rest of the video. Take care.
Right, now that you've seen that from Saeed, I'm seeing a lot of tears, my friend. Firstly, I'm very sorry for missing this video until after I've come home. But it is what it is. Hey, and he's right. He's absolutely right. I mean, we humbled them, right? And we do own Manchester United. I mean, it's 5 wins in the last 6 or 6 wins in the last 7, something crazy. Since we've been promoted, I think they're our best team to play against. Never seem to struggle against them at all. In fact, I think it's our best win percentage of any other side in the Premier League. So there's a couple of things that I didn't mention on the podcast up until now. Since I've got home, Julio Enciso has now gone to Ipswich, which is just typical timing. As we all know, whenever I do something, I miss something. So Julio's gone, which is a shame, but I think it's probably a good move for him. I have to say, I think from a club perspective, as me and Toby discussed in the video earlier on, I still stand by. I think if we're going to get rid of Ferguson and Julio, we probably do need to bring in somebody else. But as it stands, Julio to be gone is a good move. I think he needs time to be the big guy somewhere else, whilst also maybe being given that, I don't know, a reduced role perhaps, being out of the limelight a little bit in the grand scheme of the Premier League. And, a relegation scrap could really, really, really help him. I think mentally, definitely one of the biggest issues he's had here, for sure. But just to touch back onto Saeed in the Manchester United world, that's a double again. 6 points against Man United. And Saeed's very kind, I think. He's not been I was expecting a little bit more. The Bournemouth comment was a bit of a strange one, my friend. Why do you like Bournemouth so much? That's really odd. But shout out to him. Make sure you give him all the support and whatever else. And enjoy the rest of the clip. I'd say some of it will be a little bit outdated, but that's just typical, the way of football, I suppose. And goodbye and see you very soon. One last thing I want to just say to everybody, right? Because I remember this being a big conversation as to whether this is our best squad we've ever had. This is Manchester United fans just come on here and said that most of our players are fringe players, by the way. He's talking about Adingra and even Ayari, who's just breaking out into the team, would start for Manchester United. Which, if you think about it, just say that sentence in your head again. These players would start for Manchester United. This is Brighton and Hove Albion we're talking about. Okay, not only is that crazy in itself, but then think about the squad depth we've actually got. Right? Just think about it for a minute. You know, I talked about the tactics earlier. When I say this team is a European team, I 100% mean it. Seriously. Anyway, enjoy the rest of the video, but just a little bit of food for thought. Listen to what Saeed said. He's the Man United fan at the end of the day, and he actually goes to games. The new guy, obviously, Daniel Nijskovsky, the new assistant manager is now in. Seemingly, I mean, he's got off the flying start, whether it's anything to do with him whatsoever, but maybe he's had a few words or something to do with it, or it's complete coincidence since he's come in, but his last 3 games have ended in 3 wins. I mean, either fair play to him for doing it, or secondly, you know, hopefully it's one of them where I think he was a teacher of Hertzler, wasn't he, previous? So I think he was the one that sort of brought him up through the academy over in Germany. So, you know, fair play to him for sort of doing what he's done and coming over here and taking this job on in itself is a big thing for us. It's like we've got our own little tutor now, which, you know, for someone like Hertzler, who is still extremely young, right? And we have to always remember that. I know that age is not really a gauge of how good you are, because, you know, you see young players all the time tearing it up when they're 18, but, you know, maybe the older players aren't so good. Doesn't really matter so much, I don't think, with how good you are and how good you are as a coach. And I think the thing is with Hertzler is maybe just that naivety, which we spoke about previously, which is definitely, I think you can definitely see a change in these last few games. And that's why I'm trying to give a lot of praise here towards it. That last sort of part of the game against United, I wanted to speak about. At halftime, I remember saying, because we like to play this, how we did under De Zerbi anyway, we like to play from the back and we like to build the ball up. Best build-up team in the world was what people used to say about Brighton, by the words of Pep Guardiola, by the words of the big managers in the world, right? That's what I want to see from Brighton, always, right? I didn't see that at all this season, and I'm, okay, right, fine. Where do we go from it? Hertzler always promised this sort of overloading, you know, particularly with the amount of quality, as I said to you before, that we've got up front. I think we saw that a lot more in these last few games. I think, although it might look a bit ugly, and I think Lewis Dunk alluded to it as well, you don't have to be pretty to win. And I think he said that this is the first time they've learned that for the first time in ages. So that's quite eye-opening to me, thinking, okay, they're now realising that they don't have to play pretty. And I think if you saw a lot of I think we are one of the most, but even in this game alone, errors leading to goals, I think we're one of the highest. And you can put that down to a number of reasons, right? It can come down to defence, it can come down to the goalkeepers, it can come down to midfield not being where they should be. For me, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, or the comments can tell me if I'm wrong, but when we're trying to play out from the back, it's not the same as what it was then. The difference is, right, and hear me out here, the receiver of the ball is now Carlos Baleba, who's absolutely fantastic player. But when he's sort of turning, there's not them players in them positions in that first phase to go through that whole phase of play. So we're no longer really, because obviously Hertzler likes to empty the midfield, which is great, right, when it works. But when you're emptying the midfield but trying to play out from the back, it's sort of counterproductive, because if you're then going on the turn, you've got no one behind you at all. So then you're going to get any bit of pressure, you're going to give the ball away, obviously. So it's either going to look like a bad kick out from Bart, or it's going to look like, you know, weak from Baleba or weak from somebody like that, right?
I mean, I think just touching on your point there, you've gone from having De Zerbi, who is a master in playing out from the back and all of that. Like, that's obvious. The best managers in the world have praised him for that. Wherever he's been, I remember we used to watch clips when he was at his previous club. No, was it Shakhtar? Shakhtar, that one. And when they played against Real Madrid, and he popped Real Madrid. Like, he is probably the GOAT when it comes from playing out from the back. And from what I've witnessed firsthand as well, the level of detail he goes into, that's his style. So I think kind of you can put sort of any sort of players in that, as long as they understand it, he'll get them playing. And he is an absolute mastermind at that. And Hertzler is, again, a brilliant manager, but he has his own philosophy, he has his own way of coaching, he has his own style. It's never going to be the same. And it's sometimes hard as fans. We want to see really pretty football, but then we also want to see our teams win games of football. And if you maybe look at Southampton this season, what would their fans prefer? Would their fans prefer them to be losing games of football or trying to play really pretty football. It's a really difficult one because they've given away lots and lots of goals and they're only on 6 points this season. But then if they maybe were just thumping it long, their fans are probably also gonna maybe have a go, be like, this is not the football we want to see. So sometimes it's really difficult as managers to get it right. And I think Hertzer is actually getting it right at the moment. There's times when he knows when to play, and then there's times when he knows he also needs to go long because he's adapting really well.
Sorry, we had some light antics. If you saw Toby's angle, if it's like moving a lot, it's because it pretty much fell when I was trying to stop it from falling. Anyway, that didn't happen, did it, Tobes? Right, but yeah, no, I get what you're saying, and I do give credit to it, and 100% the difference from De Zerbi ball is always going to be huge, and you can't measure them to be comparative at all. That's why is what I'm going to say as my next point. Stop doing it, right? And that's when I saw. I think it was. We scored our goal for a long ball, and we did it a lot to Spurs. And I'm remembering these big games where we won big games and big goals. Always came from that long ball over to either Mitoma, Minte, who, you know, especially Mitoma has one of the best first touches in football. If you're going to put a long ball over, if you're going to give it to him more often than not, he's going to control it and be in behind and beat his man. Minte's ridiculously fast. Jorginho's very, very good on the turn and very good driving the ball forward, as is Joao Pedro, as is Danny Welbeck. You know, the list goes on with these players, what they're good at. So actually, that overload is perfect for them players. Yeah. What's not perfect is the players like Matt Weaver, for the players like Matt O'Reilly, for the players like Carlos Baleba, who maybe aren't suited to doing that long ball, emptying midfield, because these are players that, if you were to play through midfield, would be absolutely perfect. You'd be talking about Matt O'Reilly as being brilliant, Weaver as being brilliant, as Baleba as being brilliant, even though Baleba seems to shine anyway. But you would look at them in a different light. Whereas we don't so much, because we look at the attackers as being our complete carriers of you know, contributing towards goals, which I suppose, when you think about it, losing someone like Pascal Gross, you know, you have to distribute the goals out across the team. So all that stuff makes sense to me. And what we stopped doing after we scored that first goal was exactly that. We stopped the long ball and we started going with this short pass out, which is exactly what led to a goal. And actually, it was coming in fairness to United at the time. You know, they deserved to score when they did. It was a sort of a silly kick and it was a silly turn. We were never going to get out of that situation alive without either giving away a penalty or conceding a goal. So when we stopped doing that, you know, I thought, but it was working. Why do we stop? And to be fair to Fabian, we went in at half time, and I was thinking a little bit like, please don't throw this away, because we can beat them. They're nowhere near. We can be better than them for sure. We came out and did exactly that. We went for this long ball, and they just could not keep up with it. You know, because as I said, if you've got these sort of players on the turn, these level of dribblers, you can't keep up with that. So if it's a case of adapting and going with that style, and that's the style we're going to go with, then that's going to work brilliantly. Obviously, it's not going to work every week.
I think the only thing on that is, if you just keep doing that, what do you then think the opposition are going to do? Yeah. So like I think the reason why they mix it up, it's like any team, they always have to mix it. If you just keep doing the same thing, the team will go, hold on a minute, you know exactly what you're going to do, and they're going to become really predictable. So you do that long ball, they're just going to be tight on the wingers, or they're not going to leave that space. They'll just drop off a bit more. So you have to do the passes to then create the space in behind. So it is difficult, but you do have to mix it up. And I know sometimes when fans have that little heart in mouth moment when they play that short pass, it's because it's creating the space further up. So if you literally just done long ball, you'd be like, oh, this isn't working. So you have to change up in the game, because players are intelligent. If you're a defender and you just keep seeing that ball going over your head, what are you going to do the third time that it comes? You're just going to drop off a bit more. But then if they pass it short, you go, oh, I need to get up. And then if they go long, you have to keep them guessing. Otherwise, it will just become really predictable. So it's difficult, because I know as fans, you go, that long ball's just worked, do it again. You got to realise players are a bit smarter than that. They pick it up.
Saying every time we get the ball, just lump it. I'm just sort of getting at the point of when we stopped doing that and we started, we almost tried to then go back to the old Brighton, which I thought it's a bit of a bit... It's very, what's the word probably I'm looking for here? It's very counterproductive, probably, is what I'm looking for. And we then sort of shot ourselves in the foot a little bit too much. You know, maybe there's a bit of a middle ground somewhere, which I'm sure they'll work out, because they should be better than me. I'm someone that sits on a podcast in the pub at Brighton North Lanes, right? So I'm not the one that's meant to be doing all this stuff. But this is from someone that watches it anyway. But yeah, from what I saw, that's what it looked like. And as I said, credit to not only the manager, but the players for adapting to it and doing a very good job of it. But Brighton in general, Toby, I mean, we're back now, what, 3 points off Europe, is it now? Where all of a sudden everything looks different. I remember a few weeks ago saying that, Europe, it's whether we even get it anymore.
Well, we spoke about the best opportunity for the club to maybe get Champions League football. And I think you still put yourself in that position. I think we're starting to see now that teams are starting to pick up a bit more form. It's just, you just got to hope that Brighton are one of them where that form maintains, because there are teams that are starting to pick up a little bit, and it is that time of year when pressure now starts to kick in, when you get that little bit closer towards, sounds mental saying towards the end of the season.
Not even in February.
Yeah. But obviously as the games sort of tick over, you are getting a bit closer to the pressure. And I think the only sort of, well, only, but a good positive for Brighton is there's still a lot of teams still in Europe, sort of in and around the area. So yeah, I think you're still in a really good spot. And I think if you get any sort of European football this season, that's really good for the club. I think it's clearly what they wanted. But of course, you want to try and reach the highest level. I think another worry now, you see City are now starting to get back to their best. Like, obviously them thumping
very
Ipswich
active in the Champions in the transfer market.
Yeah,
as well.
And you're now going, okay, you can't actually see them losing anymore. So they're just probably going one of their runs. So that's probably another Champions League spot maybe ticked off. But it's tough. I think Brighton have put themselves in a good position. They just got to now just keep trying to get results and keep trying to win. And especially them home games, I think, are really important. Brighton tend to always be quite solid at home. It's turning them, like, draws and stuff, hopefully into wins. And I think that's what makes a really good side. Like, I think you look at Liverpool the other day at Brentford, that looked like it was about to be a draw, and then they managed to turn it into a win. Obviously the Man United game, unfortunately, they didn't turn it into a win. But for Brighton, it's turning them sort of draws where you're being dominant throughout and making it a win. Because that'll be the difference at the end of the day. It's always a difference between a few points. That's the main thing.
Yeah, I think the draws point, I mean, I think we've got dropped the most in the league now. Is it 16 points from leading positions? Yeah. Could even be a little bit more than that, maybe 19 if I'm right in saying, which is a mad stat in itself. Yeah. I mean, the way we've thrown them away has been horrendous.
But sometimes that's the way it goes. Sometimes you just start games quicker than opposition teams. So it's not necessarily maybe throwing away games. You've just actually you found yourself in the winning position early.
Discipline, isn't it? And as a team as well. I mean, I think we're a very young team, and I think when we've had our experienced leaders out, it's been at a time where we're playing a majority young side that are very naive and not ready to really be playing 90 minutes of Premier League football every single week. Of course, they're all very, very talented potential players, but they're not actually ready to be doing what they're doing. I think that's the big thing at the moment. I think I've seen a lot of people saying, we need to bring in some more experienced players, which I do agree with. But you can't just go and buy an experienced player because it's January. It's not that easy at all. And two, experienced players are either going to cost a lot of money or they're going to be injury prone. That's there's no way around that. Having Danny Welbeck back, meanwhile, is really, really, really beneficial. Yeah. I think particularly for someone like João Pedro, who we've really relied upon, is a little bit injury prone in himself, and you're relying on him to basically always be the goal scorer. Jorginho has taken that weight off him a tiny bit in the last few games, but again, these are young players. Jorginho is 22, João Pedro is 21. Yeah. So having that experienced head back, I don't know what you think, but having someone to look up to a little bit more on the pitch, and Lewis Dunk back as well, actually, I need to add. We haven't really had that at all, and it's been a little bit of a, particularly for the likes of Yassine Ayari, for example, in midfield, where he's not had someone to look over his shoulder to, because if he does, he's looking at Carlos Baleba, who's 20 as well, and it's very difficult for these players to look up to anybody. And I think JP Van Hecke alluded to it in his in his post match a few weeks ago, and we are very young. JP's 23.
I think sometimes you do as a young player. You sometimes look around for that maybe a bit more of an experienced head, maybe just to calm situations down, and just someone maybe you just look to, maybe just to rely upon in little moments. I think that can help you get through games. Obviously, you'd like to think James Milner might have played an important part for you this season, but obviously he hasn't really been available, which is a real shame. And obviously, like you say, you have Dunkey who's been out injured and Welbeck. So I think it's really positive that them are coming back into the picture, because as a young player, you do sometimes look around for that bit more of like support, not necessarily whilst the game's going on, but in them moments when you have pauses in play, just someone just maybe get the group together and speak. That comes from experience, and sometimes it is presence as well. Like Dunkey will have that presence. The players will all look up to him. So sometimes you need that on a pitch, especially when they're all quite young. So I think it's very positive for the club and for the rest of the players as well. It makes them feel a little bit more comfortable, and it's good because they're always around the training ground, and that's nice. You always have them people like James Milner will be around the training ground, Steely will be around the training ground, but you don't win your games at the training ground. You win the games on the pitch, and sometimes you need that on the pitch as well. As much as it's important, it's on the training ground, creating that environment. You also need it on the pitch. I think it's really, really valuable.
How big do you think it is losing, obviously De Zerbi staff, but more to the point of Lallana and Gross? I spoke about it last podcast with We Are Brighton, and to lose all of those sort of combined amount of people that everyone really looks up to, it's a lot, right? I mean, you all of a sudden, no one's there to really be there to give you that arm around the shoulder that you were used to being used to. That's all gone now, and all of a sudden, it's time for people to start stepping up. And you can't just expect the likes of Van Hecker, although he's been playing for a couple of years, he's still very much a young player. He's still very much, I would still call him the upcomer. I wouldn't say that Van Hecker's necessarily ready to come and lead the team yet. Of course he's not, right? And I don't think you see many captains sort of our age group. It's not going to happen, right?
No, and I think also the other thing, when De Zerbi left, he had a lot of staff with him. All very experienced. A lot of them were ex-pros who played high level of football. And I think the staff, Hertz are all quite young. They've been involved in first team football, but they're still quite young. So I think, again, it's really important that they brought in this assistant coach that brings a bit more experience and a bit of an older head, sort of just for the players to look up to. Don't get me wrong, they'll look up to all the coaching staff, but even for some of the coaching staff, someone to look up to who's been in and around first team football for a while, as an experienced first team football, I think is really important. Like Crofty is a prime example. Like, he's been involved in coaching for a while. He's not a experienced coach, but he's probably not as experienced as other first team coaches, because a lot of his work's been in academy football, and the environment to academy football and first team football is very different. So I think it's good that he's come in. One for the coaches and two for the players.
No, I agree. It'll be interesting to see how he, if he's got any sort of tactical nous with him as well, seeing as he was a bit of a teacher and a leader in that German setup and what he did with obviously Fabian Hertzler himself. It is an interesting one. I've got to be honest, because it was one of them where people didn't really understand what we're bringing him in for. Everyone was a bit like, well, why do we need someone else when we've got Crofts? But as you say, it is a case of Crofts is still very new to his job as well. He needs to start learning and getting himself up the ranks as well. So
and he will do. Like he's a brilliant coach, and it's just he's not a non-experienced coach. It's just from that first team side of things, he's probably been involved the last few years or so now. So it's not like you're not looking at someone who's got 10, 15 years of experience. So he'll bring a lot of new things, but sometimes you need that bit older, experienced head to do that. I think Crofty's doing it well. I think he's now involved with Wales first team, so he's going to be bringing stuff from that as well with his job. So I think he's just going to keep going and going. It'll be a matter of time probably before he picks up a manager's job if he wants it. I think a lot of people will look at him maybe in 2-3 years so time and go, blimey, he's got a hell of a lot of experience. We want him as our number one. So I think that'll be a decision that he'll probably make if he wants to carry on being like an assistant coach around sort of the Premier League, or if he goes and looks for a main man job somewhere, or if Hertzler moves on in a few years, he might be the man to step in, and it's perfect for the club. They're not having to outsource and invest someone. They've got someone who's been involved with the club for years. So in a way, I think for him it's a win-win. I think the club are maybe looking at that as well.
Well, when we talk about Brighton in Europe and Brighton in the Champions League, Brighton in Europa League, realistically, we've got absolutely no experience of being in any of these scenarios. And we saw that a lot when we got to Europe for the first time. That shock, that culture shock, all of a sudden, hang on a minute, we're playing in Athens, we're playing in Marseille, we're playing in Amsterdam. This is now big boys time. You've now got to really step up and show it, right? And I think it gave us a massive, massive taste. It made us think we can do this because we really, really believe we can do it.
And you also had De Zerbi, who had been involved in big Champions League nights. And
this is sort of getting me to the point. So then actually, even on the pitch, we even scrap the Zerbi, scrap the coaching stuff, even on the pitch, you had a lot of players there who had been through big games and big nights themselves. You know, there's like likes of Lallana, even McAllister before he left.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a shame actually he didn't want to just see that season outwards. Although it would have been really difficult to stop him going to Liverpool.
Yes.
It would have been so nice to have him for that year after just winning the World Cup and the Copa America, because having that experience there of winning culture, but not just so much him, but those leaders on the pitch, as you say, now you can sort of see it. Do you think if Brighton got to the Champions League, Europa League, or even Conference League now, we maybe would have enough experience next year? Or do you think it would just scare us a little bit? You maybe not have that, and what's the word? I don't want to keep saying the word experience, but you know what I'm trying to say, that it's a know-how, isn't it? It's a different language, if you like. When you get to that level, you know, all of a sudden, as much as you say, Andrew Crofts and Lewis Dunk are fantastic club people and absolute leaders, you do need that external to come in and say, look, I've won everything here. I know how it all works. I've been on these nights. It can be scary, but we'll get you through it, and this is how.
I think it's tough because young players are very different. I think now not a lot seems to phase them, but like you say, a big Champions League night or a big Europa League night, I think that's enough to sort of phase anyone. So I think you probably do need that like experienced head maybe, but you've got that, like obviously Lewis Dunk has been involved in England. He's gone to like major tournaments, so the value that he brings from that, and obviously James Milner, if he stays next season, it's I think if you do make Europe, there'll probably be some recruitment involved to maybe bring in someone a bit older and maybe a bit wiser who sort of played European football for probably a while. Not necessarily for them to maybe play every week, but just so they're more just in and around it, and you can maybe just rely on them if you are not struggling a bit, but if you just need that bit of a calmer head, you can sort of just throw them in there. I think it'll be interesting to see, but you don't know until you know. Like you don't know until you play them players in them big games. And if the club are looking at, right, we want European this season, then we want European the next season, then players you have, where are they going to get their experience from if you don't play them in that initial season? So it's getting that balance right of, we need players for right now, but then we also need players for 2, 3, 4 years time. So you can go, actually, they've played 2, 3 seasons in Europe, and now all of a sudden we're now pushing. So getting the balance right is important.
Agree. I think that's probably the one thing that I have to give so much credit, and you say the same, to Brighton for is more often than not getting that balance right is pretty spot on at the best of times. It's a good 80+% of hits, no misses, really. And I think that's one thing that I'm quite confident for. If we do get to a summer transfer window and we are looking at that, I think, that'll be very good. Although my target probably isn't Champions League now. I'm probably looking more at Europa League.
I don't think it was ever the target. I think a lot of it was like a hope. I don't think the target would have been we're getting Champions League football. That was just we'll see where we're at come the end of the season.
I had someone on here saying that we're going to win the league. I said that was the target.
But I don't think you can't really set that. You just have to play and not put that pressure on it. It's difficult. I saw something the other day about people complaining about Maresca when he was like, "Oh, we're not going for the title," and then you sort of seen Chelsea drop points. He's like, "Hold on a minute. You got to say now we're going for the title," because that comes across to the players in the dressing room. And I understand both points. I get that, but that's Chelsea, and obviously Chelsea are a bigger football club than Brighton. You have to say that, as much as obviously the fans hate saying that.
It's true though, isn't it?
But Chelsea have won the Premier League before. Right? Chelsea have won the Premier League before. So as a Chelsea fan, you go, hold on, we are going for the title. So to maybe hear your manager say that can be a bit like, oh, okay. But
at that level, it's different.
I understand both points, because then he doesn't want to put the pressure on his players because they are young. So it's tough. But I think for me, Brighton aren't going, no, we should be getting Champions League football. I think European, 100%. But I think Champions League, you go, right, you get to maybe the last 6 weeks and you see where you're at, and this is potential. Yeah. But I think that the target was just European football this season. Yeah.
One final point I'll say, just on the squad's point of view. I saw someone say it on Twitter. Apologies, I can't remember who it was that put it on. But the likability of our squad and the personnel we've got here, and the amount we sort of... You look at the Brighton team and you just quite like everybody. Everyone looks like they've got a good team spirit. Very cringy togetherness word, but it's true. Yeah. And I think that when we had that sort of game at United and Ipswich, particularly the Jorginho videos, I don't know if you saw them. It's just, guys, he loves it, right? Yeah. And that's what it's all about. But particularly if you look at that back four, Purvis, Estepinian from left to right. You got Dunk, Van Hecker, Veltman, all very good club people that you like all of them. You can tell they've got a good personality. Even when you look at Carlos, as I said to you, Jorginho before, all these players have a very good character about them, and I think that's been one of the biggest things that Brighton have really emphasised, haven't they? That they want to have nice people, good people at the club, and it's difficult to say that you can't just be nice all the time, because you need to then win and have a bit of a more cutting edge, and you need to be a bit more ruthless, and that doesn't come with being nice necessarily. But having that friendly vibe, that good vibe at Brighton, I think that's what makes certain results a lot more significant, do you think?
Yeah, I think you probably don't really have a bad word to say about the players as such, and I think it can make it a little bit nice. You maybe feel a little bit closer to the players from that side of things. So I think it's results business at the end of the day. If you're winning games of football, it's always going to feel nice. But of course, when there's that like togetherness and that group aspect, probably does feel a bit better. Like maybe look at like Man United, probably the complete opposite to Brighton at the moment.
Well, this is it, because the good call on United, to be honest. I mean, I saw that Amorim had an absolute massive go at everybody. Whether that's true or not, I guess we'll never really know.
But it still comes out.
But you see it.
Yeah, it's still like, that's still, I don't think you'd ever hear that from Brighton, because people, even if it was, they'll go, well, that's just not true. So I'm not saying the Man United one's true. It's just that it all of a sudden becomes a bit more believable just because of the way everything is.
And you can tell
that club at the moment.
I always go back to it, but that Chelsea one when they were taking that penalty, and you see them all fall out over it, and you can see even now, there's an element of being selfish, right? But then there's also where it goes a little bit too far, and then players start arguing with each other.
I don't think you have a lot of players at the club with egos, or they'll have their own ego, but it doesn't really show.
No. And when it does, they get kicked out.
Yeah, like they don't think they're better than someone else, or they're not like, I'm better than him, I'm better than him. They're all together as that team, and as it should be. Like, you're all one team together. Of course, you'll have your own individual goals, and you'll probably lose some players at the end of the season. Like João Pedro, I'd be shocked if he probably doesn't move on at the end of the season. And I think everyone would be happy for him. I wouldn't
be that surprised either, to be honest.
Yeah, so and everyone would be happy for him. No one's going to be bitter or sour, like, I should have got that move. So I think, it's the club always, I think, do it right when it comes to that. And I think it's important for what the club want to build and achieve. Yeah,
agree. Final point, I know it's a bit difficult to predict, but we've got, another week or so left of the transfer market. See a bit of talk online, actually a lot more talk online the last couple of days. 2 outgoings, potentially a few incomings. Whether they're true or not, we'll never know, but the idea that Brighton want a right back and a centre-back is probably no secret. Whether that happens before the deadline, I'd now be kind of surprised about, if I'm being honest, unless something really changes. I can't see, for the record, that Tosin's going to be anywhere near this Brighton team anytime soon, especially with his recent goal scoring at Chelsea. But I think, in general, for us to get a centre-back in would be quite important, whilst maybe a right-back is important, but maybe not completely significant. I think on the outgoing front, probably more worth talking about than the incoming front, because at the moment it's difficult to say. On the outgoing, Evan Ferguson. We spoke about it a little bit off air. Seems like it's likely that he goes, but there's no decision yet. Although a lot of media noise, which is very unusual for Brighton. It has to be said.
Brighton normally keep things very hush and a lot of things under the radar. Like whenever you see a transfer fee with Brighton, it's always undisclosed. They always keep things
undisclosed
private.
Fee, but every single media outlet said how much it is.
I don't know. It's difficult. Obviously, Paul Barber came out and was like, "There's really going to be no real movement." He hopes there's no real movement in January.
He said that every single time.
It's tough, and that's what I mean. He does. I think he does it just to keep things quiet. I don't know. It's a difficult one with Evan. Obviously, everyone wants to see him do well, and he's a fantastic player. Something's just not clicking this season in that style, and it's also, as a club, you go, okay, when Welbeck's injured, he's not playing, and when other players injured, he's not playing. I'm starting to struggle
to believe it now.
Well, it's difficult. I just don't know if the manager sees him in his style, and if that's the case, then I think the best thing for him is to go out on loan. I think that probably would be the best thing, because he's going to play. But always, it's tough for clubs to sort of send players out on loan, because in case you do get them injuries, you then need them all of a sudden. But even when you have the injuries, he hasn't really been playing. So I think that's when, as a club, you go, okay, he's still not playing when we have them injuries. Maybe the best thing for us is to send him out on loan. Because the last thing you want to do is shoot yourself in the foot. You send him out on loan, and then the next 2 games you've got some injuries. You're like, oh my God, we want him back, and you can't do that. So for me, I think probably best case is probably does go out on loan. You just want to see him back playing and scoring goals. But you never know. It's Brighton. You never know what's going on in the transfer window. It's very quiet.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's the best way to be it, and I completely agree with them. But at the same time, I do have to cover it and talk about it because that's kind of what all this is all about. But yeah, I think Evan Ferguson, for me, I think for the player, it's the best decision to go.
Yeah.
I think 100%.
Young
I'd
players
love
need to be playing and minutes
agree.
and
And
goals.
when he's at his potential, still at this potential, he has to be scoring as many goals as he physically can.
We spoke about market value as well. I think also when he's not playing, his market value is dropping. So if anyone's interested in him in the summer, they're going, hold on a minute, he hasn't really played this season, hasn't scored many goals. You'll give him 15, 20 million less than probably asking price. Whereas if you send him out on loan and you go, hold on, he doesn't fit our style, but he's still a very valuable player, the market value is going to be higher. So I think that's an important business decision from the club as well. But my main not concerns, but I just want to see the player do well. So of course that's what I want, and what's probably what fans want is you care more about the player, but then the club also needs to think about from the business side of things.
This is the difference between player and fan. Is the difference is I completely agree that the player needs to be treated, but then I also look at the fan point of view of if we let him go, we almost have to bring somebody in because we haven't got a great deal of strikers. It has to be said, and the two that we do have. In their own admission, are not the most injury-free players. I mean, João Pedro has got a bad injury record. That's it. Danny Welbeck has got a bad injury record, and that's it. So when they're both out, then you are struggling a little bit, especially if you're looking at getting rid of Julio as well.
Potentially.
Julio going on loan. Again, it makes absolute sense. I agree with the decision. But we've already let go of Facundo, so then you've got a bit of a gap. Jorginho, of course, can score goals, but I wouldn't want to rely on him to start scoring goals. I like him quite in that 9.5 that he's playing at the moment. He's not quite 10, he's not quite 9, but he floats in between both and does a good job of it. Go right as well. And I don't want us to, upset the balance maybe a little bit. I mean, obviously, I know Ferguson isn't playing, and I completely get that. But yeah, probably if we do let him go, I would be happy with it on a player point of view. But it would maybe be a case of I saw there was a link to that Zimaz. I don't know too much about him. But again, the sign that there's links to other strikers is probably a promising one of thinking, okay, Evan, you can go. If he does get a green light, I'd assume that probably means that there's been a bit more movement on the incoming front.
You probably would be surprised if him and Julio both go and then you don't bring anyone in. Because I think another thing of Julio is he brings a different dynamic. Sometimes, like if you just want a dribbler and someone who's just going to try, it brings a little bit...
Shooter.
It brings a bit more energy. I really like him. But again, I just don't know if he's in Hertz's sort of plans or his system. So I'll be surprised if both go and then you don't bring an attacking option in.
Agree.
But like you say, you never know, Brighton.
Mate, we love to just really, really narrow it down and just say, look, fans, let's just gaslight you into saying this.
You'll just pick up your phone, look at Twitter, and all of a sudden it's there.
Absolutely.
No news on it.
Absolutely. So. Final thing. Yakamoda's gone, which is not overly surprising to be honest.
I think you know it's going to happen.
Good servant last few years, had a rubbish time here, to be honest.
I think it's the best decision for the club. Like it's such a shame with his injuries and obviously the setback. It's from a player's perspective, no one wants to see that. It's a real shame because there is such a good player in there. I remember him under Potter, and he was a fantastic
utility
player.
Man. When he was good at left, right, sort of in the middle, good holder as well. So hopefully he just gets himself back into being Yakamoda again.
Another thing I touched on, he would never sulk, never moan. Like he'd never. When sometimes players are injured or having a bad time, he never sort of brought the whole environment down. No. So I think that's
you were there when
he's
he got
such
injured,
a good.
weren't you?
Yeah, so he was such a good person and human being. Like he was never really negative. So I think that's another thing to touch on. He was just a brilliant person, really. Yeah. So I think it's just best case. Hopefully you can see him now play week in, week out, which would be nice for everyone, I think.
Yeah, no, totally agree. It'd be nice to see him do well. Feyenoord as well, big club, good reputation, good opportunity for him to really, play in Europe as well. So hopefully, he can keep himself fit and do well there because, it has to be said he has struggled. And I do hope he gets his career back on track. So, good luck to you. Cuba. Right, I think that's just about everything, Tobes.
Nice.
I think we're wrapped up. Make sure you follow Toby, of course.
Please do.
Come to Earth and Stars as well. Great fun down here. Also, shout out to Neon Punk for the lights. They're very, very cool neon stuff over in Shoreham. All very local, see. We'll see you again very soon. roll on the next few games because it's just coming thick and fast now. And up the Albion. Thank you. Goodbye.